What if one empty chair could lead to the beginning of something neither of them saw coming? She was a decorated female soldier, brave on the battlefield, but hesitant when it came to love. He was a quiet, single dad, raising triplet daughters with a heart full of stories he never told. When a blind date goes unexpectedly wrong and three little girls walk into a diner with a message that melts hearts, everything begins to change. This is not just a love story. It's a story of healing, of second chances, and how sometimes the family you never expected is the one that finds you. If stories like this touch your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, where quiet heroes and unforgettable moments come to life. Now let's begin. The small town of Willow Creek hadn't changed much in 20 years. Its streets were still lined with lampposts that flickered to life just before sunset. The old diner on Maple Street, Annie's Place, still had the same checkered floors and red leather booths that had welcomed generations of locals. A neon sign buzzed softly in the window, and the smell of fresh coffee floated into the crisp afternoon air. Lena Carter stood across the street for a moment before entering her posture, upright, trained, deliberate as it had been for years. In uniform, she looked like someone who belonged more on a battlefield than on a blind date. But today wasn't about camouflage. It was about something far more terrifying. Hope. She opened the diner door. A gentle bell rang overhead. The hostess, a gray-haired woman named Doris, who recognized most faces in town, gave Lena a warm, curious smile. "Table for two?" she asked kindly. Lena nodded. "Yes, it should be under Dawson." Doris checked the logbook. "Right this way, sweetheart." She was led to a booth in the back corner where soft light filtered through frosted windows and offered a bit more privacy than the rest. The table was already set with 2 mugs and a small pitcher of creamer. "He called ahead," Doris said with a wink. "Said you'd be early." Lena smiled politely, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. She sat down, adjusted her posture, and stared at the empty seat across from her. 5 minutes passed, then 10. She traced the rim of her coffee cup with her finger, absently watching the cream swirl into the dark liquid. She'd spent years learning how to stay calm in chaos, to maintain composure in the face of danger. But this silence, this waiting, felt like a different kind of battlefield. She glanced at the door again. Still no one. Her fingers tightened slightly around the mug. The man she was supposed to meet, Jack Dawson, had been a recommendation from a former unit friend, who swore he was a good one. A single dad. Mechanic. Army veteran. Kind. Funny. Solid. Good heart Lena. The kind you don't meet twice. So she said yes, reluctantly. After years of watching life pass from the safety of distance, she finally let herself step toward something unknown. A date? A small thing. But for someone like her, it was everything. She sipped the coffee. It had cooled. Lena looked out the window, watching leaves tumble down the sidewalk. Fall had arrived early in Willow Creek, painting the town in gold and rust. She used to love this season, the promise of change it carried. But now, it only reminded her of how many seasons she'd let pass while keeping her heart in a fortress. Her phone buzzed softly in her jacket pocket. She didn't check it. Whoever it was could wait. Another 5 minutes passed. She tried not to look disappointed, but the slump in her shoulders betrayed her. She'd faced enemy fire with steadier hands than she had now. Then, just as she began to reach for her coat to leave, the bell above the door jingled again. Footsteps, small ones, rapid and chaotic. Lena turned. 3 little girls, identical, bright-eyed, and wearing matching pink jackets, burst into the diner like a ray of laughter on a rainy day. Their curls bounced as they looked around, scanning the booths. One of them spotted her and beamed. Without hesitation, the girl marched up to Lena's table holding a small bouquet of white daisies, clutched tightly in her tiny hand. "Are you Miss Lena?" she asked, eyes wide with innocence. Lena blinked. "Yes, I am." The girl offered the flowers. "Our daddy's sorry he's late," she said, matter-of-factly. "He said you deserve flowers, and he made us memorize that line." Lena's lips parted, caught somewhere between a smile and a gasp. The second girl chimed in, hopping beside her sister. He was fixing Mrs. Callahan's car again. Her tire exploded, and Mia got jelly on her shirt, so we had to change her twice. The third added with a proud nod. They spoke over one another, like only siblings could, voices blending into a chaotic harmony that somehow made perfect sense. Lena looked down at the flowers. Daisies. Wild, imperfect, beautiful. Her hand trembled as she reached for them. Not from fear. From something deeper. Thank you," she whispered. The first girl grinned, tugging at her sleeve. "Daddy's parking the truck. He said not to run inside, but we did anyway." "Is that bad?" Lena shook her head, unable to stop the smile forming on her lips. "No, not bad at all." The three girls giggled, then darted toward the door just as it opened. And there he was. Tall, broad-shouldered, hair wind-swept and still a little damp from under a mechanic's cap. He wore a worn green military jacket, the kind that told stories without words. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on her. Jack Dawson. He looked exactly like she feared he might familiar. Their eyes locked. He froze in place for just a moment, surprised maybe by how composed and radiant she looked, even in fatigue. Lena, still seated, felt her pulse quicken. He stepped forward, slightly out of breath. "I am so sorry." She raised the bouquet slightly, her smile gentle now. "You sent reinforcements," she said. He chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "I figured they'd do better damage control than I could." "They did," she replied. "They even made me smile." Jack's eyes softened. Then mission accomplished. For a moment there was silence again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was filled with potential, with the soft beginning of something real. Lena gestured to the seat across from her. "You're only 23 minutes late." Jack grinned as he sat down. "That's practically early, if you knew me better." She sipped her now cold coffee and smiled. "Then I look forward to knowing you." Outside, the wind rustled the leaves in the trees, but inside that little diner, something had shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for Hope to take a seat at the table. For most of her adult life, Lena Carter had been trained to anticipate the next move, an ambush, a shift in terrain, a coded signal in the silence. But nothing in her years of military service prepared her for the unfiltered curiosity of three identical 7-year-olds who had zero regard for social convention. The moment Jack sat down, the trio of girls reappeared beside him like a coordinated team. "This is Ellie," he said, gesturing to the one with the daisies, who immediately gave Lena a small, bashful wave. "That's Grace," he continued, motioning to the girl with the most confident stance, already eyeing Lena's military jacket with interest. "And that's Mia," he finished, nodding to the quietest of the three, who held onto her dad's sleeve and peeked at Lena with big brown eyes. The girls all wore matching pink leather jackets, the kind that sparkled a little under the diner's warm lights, with black leggings and light-up sneakers that blinked like fireflies every time they shifted in excitement. "Are you really a soldier?" Grace blurted out. "Grace," Jack warned gently. Lena smiled. "It's all right." "Yes, I am. Or, I was. I still serve, just not overseas anymore." Grace leaned forward. "Do you know how to drive tanks?" Jack groaned, already seeing where this was going. "Girls?" But Lena chuckled. "Yes. And helicopters, too." All three pairs of eyes widened. Ellie actually gasped. "That's cooler than princesses." Jack leaned back, hands up. And just like that, I'm officially boring." The girls giggled, then looked to Lena for permission to climb into the booth. She nodded, and within seconds they had squeezed in beside her Grace, in the middle, Ellie on her right, Mia on her left. Jack rubbed the bridge of his nose. This was supposed to be a blind date, with just the two of us. Lena sipped her coffee and shrugged. Blind date or battlefield, there's always an element of surprise. Jack laughed, surprised at how easily she moved between wit and warmth. "I owe you an actual dinner. Just us. I promise." "We won't be here long," Ellie said with a dramatic sigh. "Just until Dad finishes saying hi." "You mean finishes falling in love?" Grace whispered loudly, which made Jack nearly choke on his water. Lena bit back a smile. Mia hadn't spoken yet, but she was watching Lena closely. There was a kind of quiet inspection in her gaze, the kind children have when they're searching not for answers, but for truth. It made Lena sit a little straighter. Then Mia finally spoke. "Do you miss your mommy?" The question hit like a soft, unexpected punch to the ribs. Jack froze. "Mia!" Lena paused, her fingers curling around the mug in front of her. Her mother had passed just after Lena graduated basic training. It had been years, but the ache still lived quietly beneath her strength, like a shadow that never left the corner of a room. "Yes," she said simply. "I do. Very much." Mia nodded solemnly. "Us too." Lena glanced at Jack. He gave a small, respectful nod, a silent acknowledgement of the truth she hadn't known until now. 3 daughters. No mother. She looked back at Mia and softened her voice. "She must have been wonderful." "All the way to the moon," Ellie said quietly. "And back," Grace added. The table went quiet for a moment. But it wasn't heavy. It was sacred. A small space made of memory and honesty shared between strangers who somehow weren't so strange anymore. Then, as if on cue, Doris reappeared with a tray of cookies, chocolate chips still warm, and 5 napkins. "These little ladies charmed me at the door," she said with a wink. "Consider it on the house. The girls lit up like Christmas morning." Ellie immediately slid a cookie toward Lena. "You get first bite," she declared. "Because you're a hero." Lena blinked. "No take-backs," Grace said, already munching on hers. So Lena broke the cookie in half, let the warmth of it settle into her hands, and took a bite. It was too sweet, too soft, too perfect, and somehow exactly what she needed. Jack watched her with quiet amusement. "They've never taken to someone this fast," he said under his breath. Lena swallowed. "That's probably because I let them talk over me." "They let everyone talk over me," he replied. "But they listened to you." She glanced at the girls, now playfully bickering over whose cookie had the most chocolate chips. Their presence filled the booth with light and noise, and something Lena hadn't realized she missed. Life. Not the rigid cadence of drills or the sterile calm of command rooms, but life in its messy, unpredictable, heartfelt form. Jack looked at his daughters, then at Lena. Their mom was sick for a long time. The girls were just 3 when she passed. I think they remember her more in feelings than facts. Lena met his gaze. Feelings can last longer than facts. He nodded as if no one had ever said it quite that way before. The bell over the door rang again as another customer walked in, but the little world within their booth didn't notice. Grace suddenly tugged on Lena's sleeve. "Do you know what makes you a superhero?" Lena raised an eyebrow. The uniform, no Grace, grinned. "It's 'cause you showed up. A lot of grown-ups don't." Lena froze. That one landed deeper than she expected. She'd spent so long being reliable for her country, for her unit, for her command, but when it came to personal connections, to showing up for herself, that was where she had gone AWOL. Until now. Until this diner. Until this chaos wrapped in pink jackets and glowing shoes. Until this man with tired eyes and a strong heart who was brave enough to be a good dad when no one was watching. Lena smiled and ruffled Grace's curls. Then maybe I'll keep showing up. Grace beamed. Jack stood and motioned for the girls. All right, my turn to actually be on this date. You three promised 10 minutes. No, we said we'd try to leave in 10 minutes, Ellie corrected, hopping off the seat. We didn't promise, Grace added helpfully. But Mia slid out first and tugged Lena's sleeve one more time before leaving. I think you're what Daddy was missing, she whispered. And just like that, they were gone back to the other side of the diner, where Doris handed them paper and crayons and promised a drawing contest. Lena turned back to Jack, her heart unexpectedly full. He sat down again, leaned in slightly and smiled. So he said, "Where were we?" She looked at him, really looked at him. This man who fixed things for a living, including perhaps unintentionally her own fractured trust. Somewhere between flowers and forgiveness, she said softly. And just like that, the second act of her life began not with fanfare, but with 3 little strangers, who somehow weren't strangers at all. Later that evening, as dusk began to spill across the sky, like ink in water, Jack Dawson stood at the open hood of a dusty blue pickup truck behind his modest garage on the edge of Willow Creek. The last streaks of sun hit the rusted tools hanging on the wall, casting long shadows that seemed older than the building itself. He tightened the last bolt on the alternator and leaned back, wiping his hands on a faded rag. Somewhere in the distance, cicadas began their nightly symphony, and the low hum of life in a small town slowly gave way to silence. From the nearby porch, a squeaky screen door creaked open. "Daddy, can we have ice cream now?" Ellie called. "Only if Grace didn't hide the chocolate syrup again," he replied, tossing the rag into a crate. Too late, Grace shouted from inside, giggling like a little outlaw. Jack shook his head, chuckling. 5 minutes, girls. Then homework. There was a chorus of groans, but he wasn't really listening. His thoughts were elsewhere, back in that little booth at Annie's place, where a soldier with kind eyes and an armor of silence had accepted flowers from his daughters and somehow disarmed his own carefully built defenses. Lena Carter. She had surprised him. He had expected someone guarded, maybe a little rigid. After all, blind dates arranged by mutual veteran friends usually went one of 2 ways, too formal or too familiar. But she was neither. She was steady, not loud, not performative, but honest, real, the kind of real Jack hadn't seen in years. When she'd smiled at his girls, not out of politeness, but with genuine warmth, something in his chest had shifted, something that had been unmoved since the day his wife passed. He still remembered the last thing she'd said to him before the morphine took her under. "Promise me. Don't raise them in grief." He had tried. God, he had tried. Some days it felt like trying to outrun a wave with 3 kids on his shoulders. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't running anymore. Maybe he was walking. Toward something. Toward someone. The next day, the diner felt different. Jack arrived early this time, wearing a fresh shirt, still flannel, still practical, but not oil-stained. He'd even shaved. Slightly. Lena was already seated. She wore a soft blue button-down civilian clothes, though the way she sat alert upright still carried the precision of a soldier. She smiled when she saw him. Early this time, she noted. Setting new records, he replied, sliding into the seat across from her. They ordered coffee, and for a while just talked about safe things. Town gossip, local diner wars, the great chili debate, normal stuff. Then the conversation shifted. "You were a medic, right?" Lena asked. Jack nodded. "Army. Deployed 3 times. Mostly triage under fire, field surgeries, you name it." She tilted her head. "That's not easy work." "No," he said, pausing. "But it felt Human. More than the politics. More than the protocol. There's something simple about holding a man's hand while you try to stop the bleeding. You stop thinking about which side he's on or who gave the order. It's just life. Trying not to lose it. She looked at him with a quiet kind of respect. You lost people all the time. There was a silence between them. Not awkward, just real. And you? He asked. Lena hesitated. Then she slowly rolled up her left sleeve, revealing a long, jagged scar that ran from her shoulder to her elbow. It had faded with time, but still spoke volumes. IED outside Kandahar, she said simply. We lost the convoy leader. I was lucky. Or unlucky, depending on the day. Jack didn't ask questions. He didn't have to. He understood the language of pain, the unspoken code between those who had seen too much and spoken too little. I thought I'd never hold a rifle again, Lena added, but that wasn't what hurt the most. What was not knowing who I was without it. Jack nodded. I get that. She looked out the window, the afternoon light catching in her dark eyes. I tried dating before, she said almost to herself. Didn't last. Civilians don't understand the silence, or the dreams. You don't have to explain that to me, Jack replied gently. I spent a year after I left the service jumping at door slams. My girls thought I was playing some kind of game. Lena gave a small laugh. Your daughters are incredible. They saved me, he said, his voice soft. After her passing, I didn't know how to be both father and mother. Some days I still don't. But they never needed me to be perfect. Just present. That's more than most kids get, she said. Jack smiled, but it faded slowly as he looked down at the mug between his hands. I used to think I had to fix everything, like in the field. Assess the damage, stop the bleeding, stitch it up. But some things, you just learn to live with. Lena nodded slowly, like scars. Exactly. They sat in silence again, but this time the silence wasn't empty. It was shared. Held. Jack glanced at her wrist. You still wear your ID tags? She shook her head. Not anymore. I keep them in a drawer. But I never forget the sound they made when I ran. Like they were chasing me. He chuckled. That's a perfect way to put it. Do you miss it? She asked. Some days, he said honestly. But not the war. I miss the clarity, the brotherhood, the purpose. Fixing cars isn't the same. But sometimes when I get one running again, something that was considered too far gone, I feel like maybe I'm still doing what I was meant to do. Lena looked at him. Really looked. You're not just fixing cars, Jack. He met her gaze. No, you're raising 3 daughters. Alone. With kindness. With structure. With patience. You're showing up. That takes more strength than any war. His throat tightened, and for a moment he couldn't speak. So he nodded. Grateful. Then Lena leaned back slightly. Besides, she added playfully, you're not bad company either. He smiled. The kind of smile that came from deep beneath the skin, born not from charm, but from being seen. They finished their coffee, and as they stepped outside into the amber glow of the late afternoon, Jack turned to her. Same time tomorrow, Lena hesitated not out of reluctance, but out of unfamiliar hope. Yes, she said softly. I'd like that. And as they went their separate ways, she toward her truck, he toward his, neither realized that for the first time in years, they weren't walking away from something. They were walking toward it. Together. The third coffee date wasn't really a date at all. Jack showed up in his usual worn flannel sleeves rolled to the elbows, grease still faintly under his nails. Lena arrived 10 minutes earlier, again out of habit more than punctuality. Her posture still betrayed years of command, but today, she had let her hair fall loose around her shoulders, something she hadn't done since before deployment. It felt like showing up not as a soldier, but as herself. They didn't order food, just coffee. Outside the diner window, gray clouds rolled over Willow Creek. A storm was brewing somewhere beyond the hills. But inside Annie's place, everything was still, a stillness that settled only when two people no longer needed to impress one another. "You're quiet today," Jack said, watching her stir creamer into her cup. Lena glanced up. "Just thinking." He nodded, giving her the space to elaborate or not. She did. "I used to do night watches." She began, voice calm but reflective. "Camp Eagle Northern Outpost. Coldest wind I'd ever felt. Sometimes I'd sip coffee just to keep my hands from shaking, not from fear, but from frost. I remember thinking if I made it back, I'd never drink coffee alone again." Jack said nothing for a moment. "Did you keep that promise?" he asked gently. She gave a sad smile. "Not until this week." That silence came again, the kind that wasn't empty, but full of things neither of them had quite said out loud. Then Jack leaned back, slightly, elbows on the booth behind him. "You ever have one of those moments that didn't mean much then, but later, you realize it changed everything?" Lena looked up. "Every deployment." Jack chuckled. "Fair enough." He set his mug down, tapping the rim lightly with a fingertip. "I was stationed in Basra for a while. We got hit hard. Real bad. Our convoy was ambushed. We had 4 wounded, one of them bleeding out. I patched up who I could, but we were losing light, and radio contact was garbage. I didn't think we'd make it." Lena sat up slightly. "What happened?" Jack smiled faintly, but his eyes darkened with the memory. A medevac unit showed up out of nowhere. No chatter, no warning, just dust boots and calm hands. One of the field commanders, a woman, took control, set up triage like it was a drill. She had a scar just below her collarbone, about 2 inches long. I remember it because it looked fresh. She treated 6 men that day. Saved all of them. He paused. I never got her name. But I wrote a letter, handed it off to base command with my initials, JD. Just wanted her to know. Someone remembered. Lena's eyes didn't blink. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a worn envelope. The edges had softened with age. The fold lines had been creased and recreased 100 times. Without a word, she slid it across the table. Jack picked it up, confused at first, then stunned. His own handwriting stared back at him, to the medic who reminded us we weren't alone. JD. He looked up at her. You. She nodded slowly. Jack leaned back, one hand over his mouth. I never knew he whispered. Neither did I, Lena replied, until I got home and cleaned out an old box. I kept that letter. Didn't know why. I think part of me needed to believe that kindness still existed even in chaos. Jack blinked, emotion tightening in his throat. You were the one who set up the field tent. I was the one screaming at 2 corporals to stop shaking the stretcher. She smirked. He laughed, a real unguarded laugh. Then he grew quiet. You saved me, he said. She corrected him gently. I saved your unit. You saved yourself every day since. He didn't argue. Lena looked down at her cup. You know, back then I didn't feel like a hero, just tired. I stitched and rapped and shouted commands, but inside I was unraveling. Jack nodded. It's always the quiet ones carrying the loudest weight. They sat in reverent quiet for a few long breaths. Then Lena added, I never thought I'd see any of those men again, much less be raising coffee mugs with one of them in a small-town diner. Jack looked at her eyes, soft. Fate's got a strange sense of humor. Or maybe grace, she said quietly. Another silence, this one gentler. Then Lena tilted her head. What happened after that day in Basra? Jack exhaled slowly. I came home 6 months later. Kimberly, my wife, was already sick. Ovarian cancer, the silent kind. By the time they caught it, it was already stage 4. I'm sorry, Lena whispered. He nodded. We had just found out we were having triplets. She insisted I stay deployed until it was safer for them to travel. I wanted to be there. I missed the birth. Lena's fingers twitched instinctively, wanting to reach for his, but she held back, letting the story breathe. By the time I got home, the girls were 6 weeks old, Jack continued, and Kim was tired. Beautiful, but tired. We had 2 good years. Then the decline started. He didn't cry, but his voice cracked like a man who had. I held her hand the whole last night. She made me promise not to raise them in sorrow. Don't let them grow up inside grief, she said. I didn't know what that meant back then. Lena whispered, Do you now? He nodded. I think it means showing them that love doesn't die, that it transforms into patience, into laughter, into the way you pack their school lunch even when you're late for work. That's beautiful, she said. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers with new clarity. They were her light. And now, they're mine. A quiet understanding settled between them. One not born of sympathy, but of shared survival. Lena finished her coffee. You know, I never got to thank you. For what he asked. For reminding me that not all battles are fought with weapons, and not all wounds bleed. Jack stood, took a folded bill from his wallet, and set it beneath the empty creamer cup. You want to do something really brave, he asked. She raised an eyebrow. Have dinner with me tomorrow night. A real one. No coffee. No kids. Lena smiled, slow, and full of something warmer than amusement. All right, she said. But only if you promise not to bring any more surprise letters. He chuckled. Deal? As they stepped outside, the rain had just begun soft, steady cleansing. And for the first time in years, neither of them reached for shelter. They just stood there, letting it fall. Saturday evenings in Willow Creek were simple affairs. The streets emptied early. Porch lights flickered on like quiet sentinels, and the scent of backyard grilling carried on the breeze like whispers of comfort. Lena Carter stood in front of her mirror, adjusting the soft fabric of a navy blue blouse. It was the first time in years she'd dressed for something not tied to military formality or function. The subtle curve of mascara on her lashes, the faint touch of peach blush, it felt foreign, yet oddly grounding. She wasn't dressing to impress. She was dressing to feel human again. Across town, Jack Dawson was in a different sort of battle. Mia, you cannot wear your Halloween costume to Ms. Lena's dinner, he said, pulling a tutu off his daughter's shoulders for the 3rd time. But she liked it, Mia argued. She said I was magical. Buddy, she said your smile was magical, Jack corrected, setting down a pair of sparkly wings. Grace chimed in from the couch holding a marker-stained drawing. I made her a picture. Should I fold it like origami? Ellie appeared with a single daisy in a cup. I want to give her a flower again. One for every time we see her. Jack looked at the 3 of them, his chaos, his joy, his entire reason for breathing, and sighed with a warm sort of surrender. All right, everyone, we're leaving in 10. No glitter, no costumes, no spontaneous musical performances. Deal. All 3 girls responded in chaotic unison. Maybe he didn't stand a chance. At Annie's place, Jack had reserved a small table near the window. Their usual booth was already taken, and he didn't mind the change. It gave Lena more light to shine in. She walked in right on time, holding a small paper bag. What's that? He asked. She handed it to him. Backup cookies. Jack opened it to reveal 6 perfectly round golden chocolate chip cookies wrapped in wax paper. Did you bake these? No, she smiled. I bribed Doris. He laughed. I should have known. They ordered something real this time. Steak for him, grilled salmon for her. No coffee, no uniforms, no walls, just conversation. So, 3 girls, Lena said as she cut her fish with precision. Was that always the plan? Jack smirked. We planned one. God planned 3. She grinned. Sounds like a battle deployment. He pointed his fork at her. Worse. They outnumber me. Their laughter came easy now, less guarded, more familiar. Lena looked out the window. The sun had started its descent, casting a golden hue across the sidewalk, where 2 boys raced by on scooters. I never thought I'd be sitting here, she admitted. On a date. On a date, and not looking for an exit. Jack softened. I know that feeling. Lena set down her fork. I used to think I had to fix everything too, keep everything under control. But control's a myth. The battlefield teaches you that. He nodded. So does fatherhood, especially with 3. Especially with 3 who believe glitter is a personality trait. She laughed, that rare, unguarded kind of laugh that caught in her chest before it escaped. Just then, the front door to the diner opened. 3 pink blurs flew through. Daddy, oh no. Jack stood up, already apologizing. They were supposed to stay with our neighbor. But Lena held up a hand, smiling. It's all right. Ellie reached her first, holding out the daisy. One more for your collection. Grace ran up and hugged Jack's leg. Ms. Lena, we didn't want to miss dinner. Mia stood back, hesitating. Can we sit? Just for a minute. Lena looked at Jack. You think Doris can spare 3 extra rolls? Minutes later, they were all seated at the table. Lena in the middle, flanked by Ellie, and Grace Jack, next to Mia, who was quietly drawing. The salmon got cold, the steak forgotten, but no one noticed. Instead, Lena cut Ellie's chicken into smaller bites. Grace handed her a crayon and declared, You have to draw a dragon. Mia leaned her head on Lena's arm, whispering, I like when you're here. Jack watched from across the table, something tender welling in his chest. She wasn't just good with them. She belonged with them. Lena looked up and caught his gaze. I'm sorry your quiet dinner got invaded. Jack shook his head. This is the best kind of ambush. Mia slid her drawing across the table. It was a crude sketch, 5 stick figures hand-labeled. Daddy, Ellie, Grace, Mia, Lena, all holding hands under a lopsided rainbow. Jack looked down at it and swallowed hard. Family. That's what it looked like. That's what it felt like. Later, as the sky turned navy and stars blinked to life, Jack and Lena walked the girls to the truck. Ellie had Lena's hand. Grace hummed softly. Mia yawned. You okay? Jack asked quietly, lifting Grace into her seat. I'm good, Lena replied. Better than I've been in a long time. You're amazing with them, he said. I don't know about that. I do. He closed the car door and turned to her. For a moment, the distance between them was filled with something electric, not the spark of lust, but the current of connection. Jack, Lena started, but he shook his head. You don't have to say anything. She nodded. Okay, then let me do something. And she leaned in, kissed his cheek gently, not out of romance, but gratitude, warmth, understanding. He stood still, letting the moment sink in. Lena stepped back. Next time, just us. I promise. Jack grinned. Only if you bring more cookies. Deal. And as she walked to her truck, the girls waving from the window, Jack looked up at the sky, at the stars, slowly revealing themselves, and smiled. Because sometimes love didn't arrive in candlelight or roses. Sometimes it came in crayon drawings and shared dinner rolls. And sometimes the dinner you didn't plan became the beginning of everything you never knew you needed. The rain had passed by morning, leaving Willow Creek draped in a cool mist. The town smelled of damp earth pine and the soft nostalgia that came after storms. Jack had suggested a walk, not a dinner, not a coffee, Just a simple walk through the quiet backwoods trail behind the auto shop, where the path curved beneath the trees and the river whispered beside them. Lena said yes without hesitation. She needed air. She needed trees. And strangely, she needed him. They walked side by side, their boots crunching on gravel, and wet leaves, neither of them rushing to fill the silence. That was the part Lena appreciated most about Jack. He didn't push. He didn't pry. He simply was steady as the path beneath her feet. "You come here often?" she asked after a few minutes. Jack smiled. "When the girls get too loud. Or when I forget how to breathe." She nodded slowly. "I used to have a place like this in Kandahar. It was just a broken rooftop with a view of the hills. Dust everywhere. But sometimes just standing there made the noise go quiet." He glanced sideways at her. "What kind of noise?" Lena hesitated, then spoke carefully. "The kind that follows you home. The kind that doesn't knock before coming in." Jack understood immediately. PTSD didn't always arrive with flashbacks or screaming nights. Sometimes it was a silence too thick to breathe through. Sometimes it was never feeling safe in a safe place. They reached an old bench nestled beneath an oak tree. Jack gestured and they sat. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Lena slowly rolled up the right sleeve of her shirt, higher than before, revealing a long, jagged scar that curled over her shoulder like a forgotten signature. Jack looked, but not with pity. "What happened?" he asked softly. Lena ran her fingers across the scar, like tracing the memory back into the skin. "A mission gone sideways," she began. "We were tasked with stabilizing a rural village near Helmand. Intel said the area was cold. It wasn't." She inhaled deeply. "There was a boy, maybe 8. He was carrying something. I shouted in Pashto. He paused just long enough for me to get in front of him." She stopped. Jack said nothing, just waited. It was a pressure-triggered IED, homemade, crude but deadly. The shrapnel tore through my gear, broke 3 ribs, nearly took my arm. Jack's jaw tensed. "I didn't black out," Lena added. "I remember everything. The boy lived. My teammate didn't. There it was not just the scar, but the story behind it." "And the guilt?" Jack asked gently. Lena looked at him, eyes dark and steady. "It used to keep me awake. Now, it walks beside me, like a shadow, like someone I can't outrun but don't have to fear anymore." Jack nodded, then reached for the hem of his left sleeve. He pulled it back, revealing a tight patch of twisted skin near his elbow. Mortar fire. Iraq. I was shielding a radio operator. He lived. I didn't even know I was hit until hours later. Lena reached over without thinking, her fingers brushing the edge of the scar. "Does it still hurt?" "Only when it rains," he smiled. "Or when I'm alone too long." They sat like that for a moment, each touching the reminders that had shaped who they were. "Do your girls know?" Lena asked. Jack exhaled. "They know Daddy's arm is different. They think it makes me part superhero." Lena chuckled. "They don't ask for the story." "They do," Jack said. "But I always tell them it's a long one, that I'll share it when they're ready, and when I'm ready to tell it without bleeding all over the words." Lena looked out at the river below. The current moved slowly, like it was in no hurry to be anywhere else. "I've dated before," she said. Suddenly, Jack looked over. "Men who liked the uniform," she continued. "Men who liked the idea of a strong woman, until they met the weight she carried." Jack didn't interrupt. They'd say things like, "You don't have to be strong all the time," or "You can be softer with me," as if vulnerability was some kind of performance. Jack shook his head. "They didn't deserve to hear your story." Lena turned to him. "And you," he smiled, soft, without pretense. "I don't need your story. I just want to be in the chapter you're willing to write next. That silence again. But this time, it felt like something had been released, a breath neither of them knew they'd been holding. Jack leaned back. I used to think no one would want to walk beside me after Kim, like I was some haunted house still full of her echoes. She must have been special, Lena said. She was. But you're not a replacement, Lena. You're something else entirely. They sat there until the sky began to shift gray, giving way to gold, the sun breaking through like a quiet promise. Lena pulled her sleeve back down. Jack did too. Their scars had been shared, not to seek sympathy, but to say I see you, all of you, and I'm still here. Then Jack stood and held out his hand. Lena took it. No hesitation, no armor. Just a hand, worn real steady. And for the first time in a very long time, Lena didn't feel like a soldier recovering from war. She felt like a woman, being invited to live again. It was Sunday afternoon in Willow Creek, and the town had surrendered to one of those rare, perfect days, the kind where the breeze was gentle, the air smelled like blooming honeysuckle, and the sun felt like a warm hand on your back, rather than a blaze overhead. The local park sat tucked behind the elementary school, cradled by tall sycamore trees that whispered to one another in rustling conversations. Jack stood near the swing set, a to-go coffee in hand, watching the world unfold around him with the quiet contentment of a man learning how to breathe again. Are you sure this isn't too much? Lena asked, approaching in her usual straight-backed stride, though today her expression was more relaxed, even playful. It's just a park, Jack replied with a smile, not a battlefield. You haven't seen your daughters in action, she smirked. As if on cue, Ellie zoomed by, wearing a pink cape, arms outstretched like a rocket. Grace followed wielding a stick like a wand, declaring spells at birds. Mia trailed quietly, clutching her drawing pad eyes, scanning the sky as if hunting clouds shaped like dragons. They insisted you come, Jack added. Lena raised an eyebrow. They told me I was being drafted, he chuckled. Told you they were persuasive. She took a sip from the iced tea he handed her and glanced toward the playground. I haven't been in a park in years. Why not? She paused, then admitted. Noise, crowds, unpredictability. You mean joy, he said gently. Lena blinked at that. It wasn't sarcasm. It wasn't a jab. It was just truth spoken in a way that made her chest soften. Maybe she said. And then Grace spotted her. Ms. Lena, come play Super Slide Rescue with us. Before she could respond, Ellie had already grabbed her hand. We need a captain. Jack stepped back, grinning. You're being deployed. I didn't sign up for this, Lena muttered. Too late, Jack called after her. The Super Slide Rescue turned out to be a chaotic adventure involving the tallest slide in the park, a pretend volcano made of mulch, and a storyline that changed every 3 minutes, depending on which twin was leading. Lena, who had once coordinated medevac extractions under enemy fire, now found herself crouched at the top of a metal slide, pretending to save a stuffed unicorn named Princess Fluffington. And strangely, she wasn't just playing along. She was laughing. Not politely, not out of obligation, but real belly-deep laughter that cracked open something rusted inside her chest. At one point, Mia climbed onto the bench beside Jack's sketchpad in hand. Daddy, she said softly. Look at her. Jack did. Lena was racing Grace down the slide boots, kicking up bits of wood chips, hair flying, arms raised like a daredevil. She looks happy, Mia observed. Jack's eyes didn't leave her. She is. Later, when the sun began to mellow into golden hour, and the girls were happily occupied with lemonade popsicles from the park vendor, Lena sat beside Jack on a picnic bench beneath the shade of a willow tree. Her breathing was lighter, her cheeks pink from laughter. Her hand still smelled faintly of the grass crown Ellie had made her wear. I didn't know I could do that, she said. What let go? Jack tilted his head. You looked like you'd done it before. I haven't, she whispered. She picked at a thread on her sleeve, then spoke again. After my second tour, I came home early. PTSD. My CO called it operational fatigue, but I knew better. I didn't sleep. I jumped at doors closing. I couldn't handle the sound of children crying on a plane. Jack nodded slowly. I remember sitting on a bench. She continued just like this one. Watching a father push his daughter on a swing. And I felt distant. Like I was watching a movie I'd never be a part of. She turned to him, eyes glassy but not yet tears. But to day, I felt like I was in the picture, not the background. Jack didn't speak right away. He simply reached over and gently took her hand, not possessively, not theatrically, but with the quiet steadiness of someone who gets it. Welcome back, he said. She blinked hard. And then for the first time since their paths had crossed, she let her head rest against his shoulder. From a distance, the girls watched. Are they holding hands? Grace whispered. Are they going to get married? Ellie asked. Mia just smiled silently, drawing them both under the shade of the tree, her version of forever. As the sun began to dip, casting everything in that soft amber glow only October could bring, Jack helped pack up the leftover snacks. Lena loaded the stroller with Grace's doll collection, Ellie's flower bracelet kit, and Mia's sketch pad. Before leaving, Mia ran up to Lena and tugged her sleeve. Thank you for playing, she said. Lena bent down. Thank you for inviting me. The girl hesitated, then reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out a folded paper, a drawing. Stick figures again. But this time, Lena was at the center, smiling, labeled in Mia's careful handwriting, our hero. Lena's voice caught in her throat. She pressed the paper to her chest and whispered, I'll keep this. As they walked to the car, Jack looked over. You okay? She glanced back at the park, at the slides, the trees, the ghosts that didn't follow her this time. I think she said for the first time in a long time, I'm not just okay. I'm here. Jack took her hand again, and they walked forward toward the truck, toward tomorrow, not as two people running from the past, but as something new, something together. It had rained the night before, and the morning air still held that rich earthen scent that only autumn showers could bring. The light in Lena's living room poured through gauzy curtains, brushing softly across a stack of old cardboard boxes sitting in the far corner, remnants from her last cross-country move, untouched since she'd arrived in Willow Creek. She hadn't planned to open them, but something about the weekend at the park had changed her, had shaken something loose. It wasn't just the laughter, or the smell of popsicles, or even Jack's steady hand resting on hers under the willow tree. It was belonging. That whisper in her heart. It's okay to look back now. You're not alone anymore. She knelt beside the boxes, each one labeled a neat black marker. Books, winter gear, Afghanistan. That last one made her pause. She hadn't opened that box since the VA packed up her barracks in Kabul and shipped it home. It felt like a coffin of memories, yet now her fingers reached for the tape and peeled it back. Inside, faded field notebooks, laminated maps, a crushed canteen, an old coin from a boy in Helmand who'd once gifted her his only possession for saving his sister. And then buried near the bottom, an envelope, yellowed, bent, torn at the edges. She froze. Her name wasn't on it. There was only a simple message scrawled on the back. To the medic who reminded us we weren't alone. J.D. Her heart skipped. She knew those initials. Jack Dawson. She sat down, hard letter trembling in her hands. Slowly she unfolded it. We were dead in the water. 4 men down, one of them bleeding out through his flak vest. Radio was gone. Sand everywhere. I was out of pressure dressings trying to cut a piece of my own shirt to stem the bleeding. Then you showed up. Didn't say your name, just took over. Calm, precise, fast. You didn't blink when I told you he was coding. You barked orders like you were born for it. And we lived. All of us. I never caught your name, but I'll remember your face forever. And your hand steady like a metronome. You didn't flinch. You didn't break. You reminded me that hope sometimes wears combat boots. She read it 3 times, then held it to her chest. The room was silent save for the sound of her own breath catching in her throat. Tears pooled, then fell freely, not out of sorrow, but recognition. All this time, the man who'd slowly helped her rebuild her life, who brought her laughter, who made her feel again, was someone she had once pulled from the jaws of death. She had saved him, and now, without even knowing it, he was saving her. That evening, Jack was closing the shop when he heard a knock on the garage door, not the front, but the side entrance. It was Lena. She held something in her hands. Her expression was unreadable, somewhere between awe and vulnerability. "I found something today," she said softly. Jack wiped his hands on a rag, suddenly aware of the oil on his shirt. "Is everything okay?" She stepped forward and handed him the letter. Jack unfolded it. He didn't need to read it. He knew it by heart. But he looked anyway. Then slowly his eyes lifted to meet hers. "You kept this?" he asked. "I didn't know it was from you," she said. "I didn't even remember reading it until this morning." "I guess. I wasn't ready before." He exhaled slow and deep. "I wrote that letter on a cot in the back of a Humvee. We'd just gotten cleared for evac. I couldn't sleep, so I borrowed a pen and scribbled that down on scrap paper. I didn't even know if it would get to you." "It did," she said. They stood in silence, the letter between them, old fragile, and now something sacred. Jack spoke first. "You saved my life." Lena shook her head. "No, I just did my job." He took a step closer. "That's not all you did. That day, I was ready to give up. I'd lost faith. You didn't just patch up a man. You reminded me what it meant to fight for something worth returning to." She looked away, overwhelmed. Jack gently took her hand. "And now, I get to return the favor." Her gaze snapped back to his. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I get to stand by you while you learn to laugh again, while you eat pancakes with my girls, while you remember how to breathe in sunlight instead of scanning for shadows." Tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know we were connected like that." Jack smiled, not the charming one, but the kind that comes from seeing the world tilt into place. "Maybe that's what makes it matter more," he said. "We didn't need history to choose each other. But now that we have it, maybe it means we were always meant to meet again." She stepped forward, and this time there was no hesitation. Her arms wrapped around him, her cheek resting against his chest, and he held her like a man who knew the weight of loss and now the miracle of finding something again. "I don't believe in fate," she murmured. "Me neither," he whispered back. "But I believe in second chances." She pulled back just enough to look at him. "So what do we do now?" Jack looked down at the letter in his hand, then at her. "We live," he said. "We write the next part. Together." And in that moment, under the flickering light of the old garage, surrounded by oil cans and socket wrenches, and one letter that bridged 1,000 miles of memory, 2 people who had already saved each other chose to stay. The storm came without warning. Not the kind that darkens the sky or floods the roads, but the kind that starts with a silence too still to be natural. Jack noticed it on a Thursday evening. Lena hadn't texted all day. Normally, she sent something, a photo of a coffee mug, a sarcastic meme about veteran humor, a blurry picture of a Daisy Grace had drawn. Something. Anything. But today, nothing. At first, he chalked it up to a busy schedule. She'd mentioned a meeting at the base, a resupply run, maybe something with the local VFW. But by 9 p.m., doubt crept in like fog. He called. No answer. He stared at his phone, thumb hovering over the message thread, rereading her last words from the night before. You make me feel safe again. And now she was gone. Lena stood at the edge of the temporary command office 50 miles outside Willow Creek, the fluorescent lights above her flickering like they didn't believe in permanence either. She had been called back on short notice, a mandatory 2-week operational rotation to assist with logistics and personnel training at a nearby military base. Standard procedure. Routine. But nothing about it felt routine anymore. As she packed up her duffel, she glanced at the photo Mia had drawn, still folded in her pocket, worn at the edges. Our hero. She should have told him. She meant to. But the moment the orders came through, something old returned. A muscle memory she didn't realize still lived under her skin disappear first. Explain later. In her world, detachment had been survival. But this wasn't that world anymore. And Jack wasn't just another name she might lose. By Saturday morning, Jack had stopped waiting. He sat at the kitchen table while the girls colored around him, their laughter distant, as if it came from another house. He'd gone silent, too. Not out of anger, but out of something worse. Hurt. When Lena finally texted, it was brief. Base pulled me for 2 weeks. I'm sorry I didn't say sooner. No punctuation, no emojis, no warmth. Jack read it 5 times. The ache in his chest wasn't about distance. It was about retreat. About how quickly something beautiful could vanish the moment it started to feel real. He knew that pattern too well. First they pull away. Then they leave. He tapped out a reply. I didn't think I was someone people disappeared on anymore. He hovered over send, then deleted it, and said nothing. Across town, Lena sat alone in her temporary barrack phone in hand, staring at the message she didn't send. I was scared, Jack, not of you, of what it means to stay. But fear is a poor messenger, and silence the worst translator. So, like many before them, they said nothing, and the space between 2 people who had already survived war became more dangerous than anything either of them had faced in uniform. Monday came. The girls noticed first. Why didn't Lena come this weekend? Ellie asked, dangling her legs off the porch. Did she go back to soldier stuff? Grace added, drawing shapes in the dirt. Mia, as always, said nothing, but her brow furrowed. She could feel it, the shift in her dad's smile, the way his eyes drifted to the road and lingered too long. That night, Mia wrote a letter. She didn't tell her sisters. She just folded it quietly and slipped it into her backpack. 3 days later, Lena returned to her apartment. It didn't feel like home anymore. Not since Jack's laugh had started to echo in the hallways of her memory. Not since Ellie's cape hung forgotten on the doorknob. Not since Mia's drawing lived on her fridge like a silent heartbeat. The moment she walked in, she saw the envelope. It was pink. Crayon handwriting on the front. For Ms. Lena. She opened it slowly, already feeling the crack form in her chest. Inside was a folded paper with 3 parts. A stick figure drawing Jack, the 3 girls, and Lena holding hands. 2. A hand-drawn daisy. 3. And a letter. In Mia's careful block letters, we don't know if you love our dad, but we think he misses you. A lot. He doesn't say it out loud, but his coffee got cold 2 times, and he didn't even drink it. Grace says that's how you know he's sad. We think you make him less sad. You can come back if you want. We'll save you a spot on the slide. Lena read it once, then again, and then she cried. The kind of crying that came from behind years of walls, because she had walked away without realizing she'd been walking towards something all along, and she wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. The next morning, just before sunrise, Jack sat in their old booth at Annie's place. Doris refilled his coffee out of habit. He didn't say much. Then the bell above the door jingled, He didn't look up at first. He didn't dare hope. But then he heard a voice, soft, steady, familiar. "You didn't drink your coffee," Lena said. "That's not like you." Jack looked up. She was there, wearing her jacket, holding Mia's letter, eyes tired, voice shaking. But she was there. "You left," he said quietly. "I did," she nodded. "But not because I wanted to. Because I didn't know how to stay." He said nothing. "I thought disappearing was the safest thing," she continued. "I've spent so many years building walls that I forgot what it's like to have someone I don't want to hide from." He looked at her, really looked, and saw it. The truth. The regret. The fight to come back. "I missed you," she whispered. "I missed us," he replied. She slid into the booth across from him, set the letter between them. "I want to stay, Jack. And I want to learn how to do it right this time." Jack reached across the table, took her hand, warm, firm, real. "You're not late," he said. "Just right on time." And as the first light of morning spilled through the window, painting the table in gold, the storm inside them broke. Not in thunder, but in forgiveness. The diner hadn't changed. Same flickering neon sign in the window, same smell of bacon grease cinnamon rolls, and something slightly burnt that Doris swore gave her eggs personality. Same soft hum of a jukebox that only played music from 20 years ago, and same corner booth tucked under the window, the one with the best morning light. But Lena Carter had changed. She stood at the entrance just before 7 a.m., her hand resting on the door handle, heart beating, not with anxiety, but intention. She wore jeans and a gray sweater under her old army jacket, hair pulled back loosely, no makeup except a touch of lip balm. Not dressed for a date, not dressed for a mission, dressed like someone coming home. Inside, Doris looked up from the coffee station, her brows lifting in pleasant surprise. "Well, I'll be," she said, with a knowing smile. "Took you long enough?" Lena smiled back. "Some missions take longer to plan." Doris poured a fresh cup. "He's been here every day since Thursday. Same booth, same order, same silence." Lena glanced over. There he was. Jack, alone at the booth, coffee untouched, looking out the window like he was waiting for something he didn't quite believe would happen. She walked slowly across the floor, each step echoing not with fear, but something deeper. Readiness. She reached the table, heart full. "Is this seat taken?" she asked softly. Jack looked up. It took him half a second to register her, and another half to smile. "Not anymore," he said. She slid in across from him. They didn't rush into conversation. There was no need. The silence between them now wasn't absence. It was presence. Jack reached into the inside pocket of his coat and pulled something out. He set it on the table. It was a daisy, pressed between wax paper, flattened, preserved. "The first one Ellie ever gave you," he said. Lena blinked. "You kept it," Jack nodded. "I didn't mean to. It just stayed in my coat pocket. Guess part of me didn't want to let it go." She touched the paper lightly, then looked at him. "Neither do I." He took a long sip of his coffee, still warm, then leaned forward, eyes steady. "Why now, Lena? Why come back today?" She smiled gently. "Because I realized something," she said. "I've spent years walking away first before anyone else could. But this time, I didn't want to be the one who left. I wanted to be the one who stayed." He nodded slowly. "And what changed?" "You did," she whispered. "Your girls did. That little crayon drawing Mia made. That wasn't just a picture. It was a mirror of who I wanted to be again." Jack's throat tightened. Lena continued. "You gave me space to breathe without asking me to be anyone other than who I am. That's rare. That's safe. And I realized I don't want to keep surviving life, Jack. I want to start living it. Jack reached across the table and took her hand. This time there was no trembling, no hesitation, just belonging. 30 minutes later, 3 small tornadoes in pink jackets burst through the diner door like a flash of joy. Daddy Grace led the charge, Ellie behind her, with a piece of paper fluttering in her hand. Mia followed quietly, holding something behind her back. Jack stood to greet them, but it was Lena they saw first. The girls froze mid-step. Then Ellie shouted, "She's back!" Lena braced herself and was nearly tackled by a trio of hugs. "You didn't say goodbye." Grace scolded, arms tight around Lena's waist. "I was going to draw you a dragon birthday card," Ellie added. "I missed you," Mia whispered simply. Lena crouched to their level, holding all 3 close. "I missed you more than I can explain." Mia gently handed her the item she'd been hiding, a new drawing. Same style, more details. 5 stick figures again, but this time there were balloons and a cake. A 4th figure stood between Lena and Jack, smaller. Labeled Us. Lena's eyes shimmered. Ellie beamed. "That's you and Daddy's wedding." Jack coughed into his hand, nearly choking on coffee. Lena turned slowly toward him, brow raised. He gave her a sheepish smile. "They've been creatively optimistic." She looked back at the girls. "One day at a time. Sweethearts." "That's what Daddy said," Grace shouted. Jack shook his head, grinning. "They've apparently already planned the cake flavor." "Chocolate strawberry," the trio said in unison. Doris appeared, arms crossed. "Well, if there's going to be a wedding, I'm catering." Jack groaned. Okay. Everyone slow down." Lena laughed, really laughed, as she pulled the girls in tighter. And something in Jack's heart, something that had been on life support for years, finally stood up and walked again. That evening they all returned to Jack's house. It wasn't planned. But then again, the best things rarely are. Lena helped make grilled cheese in the kitchen, while Jack folded laundry, and the girls rehearsed a wedding song that had more barking than melody. The walls of the house didn't echo anymore. They hummed, with life, with hope, with the quiet miracle of a woman who came back and meant it. Later, after the girls were tucked into bed, all 3 piled onto one mattress because we missed each other too much this weekend. Jack and Lena stood on the front porch watching the stars. No need for words. The silence was the conversation. She leaned her head on his shoulder. He kissed the top of hers, and together they stood still, not waiting, not wondering, just being in a world they never planned for, but were finally ready to call their own. The garden behind Jack's house had never hosted anything fancier than a barbecue. But today, beneath white streamers fluttering from the old oak and folding chairs wrapped in lace and ivy, it felt like something out of a dream. Not a big wedding, not a spectacle, just family, just healing, just love, quiet and hard-won. Lena stood at the back door, smoothing the front of her soft ivory dress. Nothing extravagant, no train, no veil, just a simple wrap that fell past her knees, elegant and grounded like the woman wearing it. She caught her reflection in the kitchen window. For the first time in years, she barely recognized herself. Not because she looked different, but because she felt different. Lighter. Whole. Behind her, Ellie peeked in. "Are you ready?" the little girl whispered. Lena smiled. "Are you ready?" Ellie turned dramatically and shouted over her shoulder. "She's ready!" Squeals erupted from the yard. Lena followed her through the sliding door and stepped out into the late afternoon glow of golden October light. Grace and Mia waited by the flower arch, wearing matching pink dresses and holding small baskets of daisies. The arch itself had been Jack's idea, built from salvaged wood and dressed by Doris with strands of white fabric and vines. It swayed slightly in the breeze, but stood strong, like him. And there he was at the end of the aisle. Jack wore a gray button-down sleeves, rolled with a dark vest that hadn't seen daylight since his brother's wedding 10 years ago. His hair was still a bit windswept, and his shoes slightly dusty from carrying chairs across the lawn. He looked perfect. Not polished, not rehearsed, just real. His smile, quiet, reverent, told her everything she needed to know. As Lena walked toward him barefoot through the grass, she passed rows of familiar faces, Doris in a navy dress dabbing her eyes with a diner napkin. Mr. Callahan from the auto shop clapping as she passed, the three girls fidgeting with excitement beside a cake table covered in chocolate and strawberries. And then she saw it. The fourth seat. Front row, second from the left. Empty. Except for a single daisy resting on the cushion. Her step slowed. Jack had placed it there just like he promised. For Kim, he'd said the night before. She should be part of this too. And she was. Not in absence, but in legacy. In Ellie's mischief, in Grace's laugh, in Mia's quiet eyes. Lena paused by the chair, knelt, and touched the daisy gently. "Thank you," she whispered. Then rose and walked the rest of the way to Jack. The ceremony was brief. No speeches, no grand declarations. Just Doris reading a passage about second chances. Jack holding Lena's hands like she was the only solid thing in a moving world. The girls standing close, their eyes wide with joy, their hands full of wildflowers. "I don't have vows," Lena admitted, voice quiet but steady. "Just one promise I won't run anymore. Not from you. Not from this life. I'm here, and I'm staying." Jack's eyes brimmed. "Then that's all I'll ever need." Mia sniffled loudly, drawing giggles from the small crowd. Doris wiped her eyes again. "We'll kiss the girl already." He did. And in that moment, under the old oak, surrounded by laughter and sunlight and the soft rustle of leaves, Lena Carter stopped being a soldier searching for peace and became a woman who had found it. Later, as twilight blanketed the sky in soft purples and silvers, the backyard glowed with string lights and candle jars. The girls twirled in the grass to music from the jukebox Jack had rolled onto the porch. Ellie insisted on dancing barefoot. Grace sang along to every lyric. Mia sat on the steps quietly sketching the scene, a wedding in motion frozen forever in crayon and memory. Jack stood by the grill flipping veggie burgers. Lena leaned beside him, sipping sweet tea. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Better than okay." He glanced at her. "We didn't do the big honeymoon thing. We're standing under fairy lights with sticky-fingered flower girls and a burnt burger," she said. "It's perfect." He laughed, then turned serious. "Do you ever miss the field?" She thought about it. "I miss the clarity," she said. "The mission, the purpose." "Do you have that now?" he asked. She reached for his hand. "I do." He looked down at their intertwined fingers, then up at the house, the drawings on the fridge, the half-built Lego city in the corner, the muddy shoes at the door. And he nodded. "I do too." Much later, after the guests had gone, and the girls had collapsed into bed, dresses, wrinkled feet, dirty dreams. Full Lena and Jack sat on the porch, swing a blanket across their knees. The daisy from the fourth seat sat in a small glass jar on the table between them. A soft breeze rustled the trees, and from inside they could hear the muffled sound of Grace sleep-talking. Jack looked over. "You know." Mia added a new label to her drawing. Lena raised an eyebrow. "Oh, she wrote one word above the whole picture." "What was it?" He smiled. "Family." Lena leaned her head against his shoulder and let the silence wrap around them warm, soft, safe. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was true. And sometimes, after a lifetime of war and wandering, That was the miracle. Not the ceremony, not the paper, not even the promises, but the quiet, knowing that even when life had once taken everything, it still found a way to give something back. Someone, somewhere, somehow. We'd love to know. Where in the world are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments below. Your stories, your presence, they truly mean the world to us. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, where we celebrate kindness, second chances, and the quiet heroes among us. Thank you for spending your time with us. Until next time, stay kind, and never stop believing in the power of love and healing.